Okay, this video is aimed at Cinth. This is Chris Park here again. And so basically this time, um, this is about the individual formations of ships. Now, actually, this is something that anybody who's wanting to mod this can also do. And I would love to have um, some more formations from people. So basically, what we have is this. This is a scene called Squad Setups, and it's underneath the Arc and Squads folder here. And if you open this up, this is in the AW2 Modding and GUI project. And if you come in here, you'll see there's this grids section here. And these are prefabs that are referenced by the individual ships. You'll see they're in AIW2 squads by default. And if you go under the XML for individual ships, then for like fleet ships is where it matters. You've got the visuals idle formation. So it's got assets, arc and squads, grids, grid 25.prefab. You can also say visuals idle formation _bundle and then put a different bundle name if you're creating one that's custom. At any rate, so for instance, this one here, this is the vorticular cutlass. There are there's only one per squad, so this is actually a really weird formation to use. It really doesn't need a formation, but let's look at something better. We've got the vampire claws. Yeah, that's no better. All right, so ships per squad here on the grenade launcher. It's got 2. So these things are in a certain size class of 4, I suppose. And so it's in checker 5 at the moment. So 4 checker 5. You can see scale 4 checker 5. So what we've got here is we've just got some simple cubes, and they're placed in locations within this prefab. Now, you don't have to use a cube. I'm using cubes because that's the simplest possible 3D object that's actually 3D. It has the fewest number of vertices. You know, a sphere has way more vertices. A plane is not going to be something you can view from all sides. So I've got these cubes in here. You never see them in the game. We only load them in once. And basically what we do is we say, there's a location where you see the little handles here. That's called the transform location. And that's where a ship will be placed. If there are fewer ships than there are spots, then it will just choose between them at random. If there's exactly the number, then it'll do that. It'll put one on each spot. And if there are more than there are spots, then it'll squawk at initial loading of the game and yell at you. So in this particular case, we've got Sentinel frigates here. Did I say grenade launchers? These are Sentinel frigates. 2 in the squad. Their size is roughly this, and so that's why they're being loaded in here. But that's not, since there's 5 slots in here, they'll be loading in any 2 of these slots in a given formation. And that probably looks okay for having some ships that are kind of near one another. It doesn't exactly look real formation-like, but there's a limit to what you can do with 2 ships anyway. When we start talking about larger numbers of ships here, like this one is scale 1, 100 ships in there. This is how it puts them right now, is in this cube. And, you know, here's scale 1 with 48. We've got scale 2 with 10 or with 25. And one of these here, yes, scale 4, grid 16, I just kind of dragged dragged the cubes around. You've got these different original cubes here under the unit scales. You can click into them a couple of times. You've got 4 units, 8 units, 16 units, 24 units, etc. Each one of our individual ships has a general scale that we consider it relative to. And we do have a spreadsheet for that, which Cinth, obviously, you can use. We'll have to make that public for modders as well, but some of the things that on the spreadsheet are like scale 4, or actually a little more like scale 5, maybe, and that's not a thing that exists in the mockup. So we may want specific grids based off of that. At any rate, forward is, I believe it should be looking out this direction. That's the direction all the ships are pointed in the game. If not, then it's looking this direction, but it should be looking over here. So this basically, if you've got a bunch of ships this way, then this is kind of how they would fly around this kind of general V. Now, of course, having ships that are in these sort of basic formations is incredibly dull and doesn't really excite me. One of the things that Cinth brought up in particular was doing tiering and stacking of things. You can hit Control D to make a copy of stuff. So if we have 4 tiered 5. Now this right now, if I hit select, is still a copy of 4 checkered 5. So what I need to do is drag this in here. Now I've created a new prefab called 4 tiered 5. And so any changes I make in here will only affect this one and not the other. If I went too fast on that, rewatch. So now I can come in here and I can say, all right, this is the center point right here of the individual squad. And so moving this around means that when something rotates, they're going to rotate around this axis. So not having a ship in the center position is probably only going to make sense if you've got an even number of ships, or if you want them to kind of swing in an arc. Imagine like a sickle on the end of a rod. They would kind of swing around like that. And so probably let's leave that one alone. So then now we can come in here and we can say, all right, well, let's maybe make these guys like a little bit lower. So you can hold down the right mouse button, use WSAD, and then E to go up and Q to go down when you're in these things, by the by. So let's go ahead and make this kind of more like this maybe. And then rather than trying to eyeball this one, I can look in here and I can say, okay, this one's position is 169, negative 2.21, and 2.35. And so if I look here, this is at 0 on the Y. So negative 2.21, make that the same. And then 1.69, see what that does. Okay, so we don't want that. We want negative 1.69 because the x-axis is right there. And then the z we do want to match, so 2.35 here. So now we've created a little staggering here. So now let's see here. I'm going to adjust this back one here. I want this to be out more and up a little higher maybe. Maybe out like this even. Maybe not quite that high. All right. So now we've got 1.08 y, 1.08. 4.21 means we're going to have negative 4.21 there. And then 1.83. I'm double clicking on each of these. And then there. So now we have ourselves some symmetry. If that's what we want. And we've got ourselves a squad of 5. Now I'm going to hit apply on this, and we've got 4 tiered 5. now looks like this down here. Notice asset bundle none. You're going to want to select AOW2 squads, and then anything that we want to can say, please, use this. Now at scale 4, there's plenty of stuff that doesn't have just 5 units. Let's take this over to the side here, and let's say 4-tiered 4. What about stuff where there's only 4 units? In this particular case, I'm going to get rid of the middle one, and I'm going to bring this in about here. Let's see, that's 1.45. Okay, so 1.45 means this will be negative 1.45. So we've got this interesting tiering here. This probably should go lower. I can select both of these at once and just lower them together since I'm doing the same axis with them. I can bring them together forward a little bit too. As long as they're relative to one another, making the same sort of changes, then no problems. All right, so we've got 4-tiered 4. If I hit select on this, whoops, that's still 4-tiered 5. So I better not hit apply on that. Instead, drag this in. Now we've got 4-tiered 4. Any sort of, and then I'm putting this into AW2 squads. Any particular squads that we want to have that formation now can. If we want to do 4-tiered 3, that's just some of these, then that's a real easy one to do because I can just chuck this in here, delete these back to continue. Yes, breaks the prefab instance. 4-tiered 3, and drag that in here. Hoorah! Now, if you want to start doing rotations and stuff on them so they're not all facing forward, that would be more useful for things like turrets. That makes sense. If you're doing it for ships that are flying, it's probably going to look pretty weird. So probably I would stay away from that and have them all facing forward. They'll rotate as one with the squad. And so there's a variety of different formations that we could start applying to ships. I'm not actually going to integrate these into the game, but these use such a small amount of data, it's like a couple of kilobytes at most, that I'm going to go ahead and let them, stay in the asset bundles and live. And yeah, that's how to create new static formations. In other words, these are formations that ships don't fly around in. These are formations that ships or buildings or turrets or whatever sit in. And so one of the ones that's going to be pretty important actually is the minefield. We're going to want something that looks kind of cool for a minefield. We may want the ability later to have in the XML here where we can have multiple idle formations and it chooses one at random or something like that. I don't know. Probably not worth it, but in theory, we could do it probably. Yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching.